In this presentation, I will refer to several terms which I believe have been first commissioned by Cut. The term articulation as used by Cut is defined as the set of protocols, procedures and patterns employed bureaucratically in ancient Egypt to effect the transfer of power from one king to a succeeding king, even from dynasty to dynasty. The classic qualifier relates to the inpu of the succeeding king co-eval with the last 4 of 70 years for his predecessor. The example is Osiris to Nama. Other articulations are less common, and are so known and referred to as such, for example Mizraim from Nama. A close examination of the featured illustration will show that Mesraim is articulating post the pictured said festival. A very infrequent articulation would have been to the start of the said year. The term peer to complete, as used in our work, is defined as the role of one king who is nominated to succeed her predecessor, who has realized or perceived that he or she may not complete a standard model of kingship, SM, when this second king dedicates some portion of the start of his SM to reign in loco the remaining years of his predecessor's 70, that is, that those he cannot complete himself. This may even be done by a steward who is most probably, but not certainly, in that case a noble. The paramount example is found at page 321, ClearingUp-Times Book of Egyptian Chronology. The term standard model, that is, of Egyptian kingship, or cut SM, as used in this work is defined as a period of either 70 or 74 years. These periods are subdivided into before and after significant milestones. For the 74 years of a CUTSM 74 we have the following breakdown. 1. Years 1 to 4 an internship so to speak. 2. Years 5 to 34, inclusive, limited or full rule depending on when this king turned 40 years of age. 3. All year 35 is his first said year. 4. Years 36 to 65, inclusive, full rule, sometimes with a son now associated to rule with him. 5. All year 66 is his second said year. 6. Year 67 to 74, inclusive, are his final years. These are often a period of honors and sometimes lots of activity. For example, Nama ends 70 years exactly at 6 months 7 days into that last year. For the 70 years of a CUTSM 70, we have the following breakdown. 1. Years 1 to 30, inclusive, limited or full rule depending on when this king turned 40 years of age. 2. All year 31 is his first said year. 3. Years 32 to 61, inclusive, full rule, sometimes with a son associated with him. 4. All year 62 is his second said year. See post second said articulation example in illustration 1, less common articulation. 5. Year 63 to 70, inclusive, are his final years. These are often a period of honors and sometimes lots of activity. For example, Nama ends 70 years exactly at 6 months 7 days into that last year. The term pre-dynasticism, as used by Cut in this work, is defined as the explanation of time preceding Nama, according to our chronology, but not referencing the academic concepts of pre-dynastic Egypt. It is a summary view of the patriarch's time of wide-ranging influence with Noah as the apex officer. Such are often called gods or demigods. For example, Hercules is Apollo in the Waddell's Manetho demigod list. There are others who are not called gods or demigods, and these include Samoths of European fame, Tubal from Spanish records, Togarmah, Cush, and Nimrod. The subject of this video is the proper assignment of dates and times for a king's reign. This ranges from long counts, such as 955 years to the end of Dynasty 6 from Neferkasika, in the role of Mn, 13 multiples of 120 years to the Whitechapel of Sinusit I in 1348 BC from the birth of Minute in 2908 BC, to questions of individual kings such as when did Egyptian chronologers, to use modern terminology, start the reign of Athathis. The Palermo stone has 47 years and 57 years for this same prince. Since we are working to an absolute dating schema, we need to accept a structure that accommodates all the inputs we will be drawing upon. This, in part, will be supplied by the standard model of Egyptian kingship based on the understanding first noted by Eleanor June Shears, that from Isaiah chapter 23, when taken in context reveals the 70 years for the reign of a king is as firmly fixed as the rising and setting of the sun. The other aspect is the data-based convertibility of detrital zircon uranium to lead radiometry, which we note has its corresponding stratigraphic assignments to orbital dating. This is arrived at mathematically by a hyperbolic curve which is parameterized at 2 points. 5589 BC, 12.31 billion years ago, and 2898 BC, 0 million years ago. The formula has a t equals 1, t equals 0 space of 2691 years, or to illustrate, t equals 0.5 generates a pair consisting of 4243 BC and 3.146 billion years ago, and t equals 0.05 generates a pair consisting of 3032 BC and 245 million years ago. These then become date conversions. 4243.5 BC equals 3146 million years ago. 3032 plus 6 months BC equals 245 million years ago. We will treat this last pair in the next segment of the video. Next we visit the deluge dating, firstly, by geology and secondly, by history. Firstly, Cut needs to correct a flood date of 829.13 for day 1. It should be 829,044,373 years ago, or 829.04. 40 days later is 828,815,463 years ago, or 228,910 radiometric years later. From basement-hosted sandstone injectites of Colorado, the similarity in age distributions is borne out by statistical comparisons among Tava sandstone. We quote a number of passages. Quote, Paleozoic samples and Neoproterozoic strata that reveal a high probability of correlation of Tava sandstone to approximately 800 million years ago to 680 million years ago strata deposited during intercontinental extension. We conclude that Tava sandstone is Neoproterozoic in age and provides a new avenue to investigation of Rodinia's terrestrial paleoenvironment. Unquote. Cut regards intracontinental extension as a deluge artifact. Further material from this paper. Quote, namely, the age of a regional system of dikes, sills, and source bodies, Fig. 1, formed by liquefaction and remobilization of mature quartz sediment. Unquote. Continuing from the paper. Quote, the Colorado Front Range offers one of the only regional scale examples of injectites within crystalline host rock. Unquote. The authors note that the source of the voluminous mature sediment, the origin of fluid overpressure, and the trigger for liquefaction will remain obscure. Cut suggests the deluge as the source, hot, violent, and worldwide. The date pair 825,810,066 minus 3,326.32378 compare with 247 days into the year 3327 B.C. to 3326 B.C. The date pair 826,896,090 minus 3,326.84395 compare with 57 days into the year 3327 B.C. to 3326 B.C. Continuing from the paper. Quote, we demonstrate a very strong probability of statistical correlation to detrital zircon age distributions of Neoproterozoic strata deposited during extension and rifting along the Protocordilleran margin, Yonke et al., 2014. Unquote. Cut suggests the date pair 1042,003,428 BC for 100 years prior to flood. The date pair 1085,003,448 BC for 120 years prior to flood. Continuing. Quote, well-defined age peaks at approximately 1.7 billion years ago, 1.4 billion years ago, and 1.1 billion years ago. We inject a comment here. Cut has approximately 3,428 B.C. See above conversion. In Tava sandstone likely derived from plutonic sources within the Rocky Mountain region, Evanschmas and Bickford, 1993, and are pervasive in detrital zircon reference data for western U.S. Neoproterozoic rocks, Yonke et al., 2014. The shoulder ages of 940 to 825 million years ago may derive from the Porphyry phase of Pikes Peak granite, Sanders, and Hawkins, 1999. Unquote. We insert a reference from Wikipedia. From Wikipedia, accesses the 11th of February 2021, quote, porphyry deposits are formed when a column of rising magma is cooled in two stages. In the first stage, the magma is cooled slowly deep in the crust, creating the large crystal grains with a diameter of 2 mm or more. In the second and final stage, the magma is cooled rapidly at relatively shallow depth, or as it erupts from a volcano, creating small grains that are usually invisible to the unaided eye. Unquote. Cut believes that, particularly, KRCD data shows porphyrized ages from hot and or cold deluge water and slush flows. This may even include electric geology phenomena. See Andrew D. Hall at the Daily Plasma website and Barry Sitterfield at GSR Updates channel at youtube.com. Secondly, an attempt to justify 3327, 3326 as a deluge date with footnotes from Sacred Texts Christianity version 2. From the Bulletin of the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, Volume 11, Part 1, 1943, pages 52 to 74. The transcriptions of the original texts have been omitted in this version. p. 52 an endnote says, quote, 3 presumably the number of years supposed to have passed from the time of Enoch to the beginning of the reign of 6 Tasp. The date for Enoch was probably calculated with the help of the Jewish world era, or the mundane era of Alexandria, beginning 5493 BC, or by counting backwards from the deluge. Taking 3237 BC, but 3251 BC according to the Coptic chronology, as the date of the deluge, C.S. H. Takazadeh, BSOS. X. 122, under. C. And adding 669, equals from Enoch's death to the deluge according to the Hebrew Genesis, and subtracting the number in our fragment, 328 for missing digit equals 8, from 3237 plus 669 equals 3906. The resulting date, 618 BC, agrees perfectly with the traditional Zoroastrian date for the beginning of 6 Tasp's reign, 258 plus 30 years before Alexander's conquest of Persia, 330 BC. Compare with Takazadeh, Ibid. 127 square. From this one may infer that the famous date for Zoroaster, 258 years before Alexander, was known to Mani Nyberg, relative to Al-Turan, 32 SQQ, thinks it was invented towards the beginning of the 5th century. Unquote. From illustration number 1, displayed on your screen, we see that the supposed deluge date of -3237 reflects the end of Noah's First World Tour. In short, the Coptic date reflects the start of Noah's World Tour. See Richard Lynch, Gent. S approximation of an 80 years period before Noah left Armenia. If we add 3284, that is, we are assuming 4 is the missing last digit, to 330 for the date of Alexander's conquest of Persia, we arrive at -3614 when using number line format. This year is the translation year of Enoch. His birth year would be 365 years earlier, or -3979. This agrees with cut chronology's previously established birth year of Enoch. Thus the flood date can be recreated as a single-year geologic event, as 3251 BC to 3250 BC -77, or 76, and some fraction of a year, which results in -3327 to -3326, which is near enough for our purposes. The next segment will expand on some of these concepts.